Naomi Carter woke early, long before the sun rose. She crept out of bed in her soft pink pajamas and tiptoed past her younger brother's room. Her heart beat fast with excitement.
Ow.
Today was her first show and tell at school. She had been waiting for this day for weeks. She hurried to her little desk by the window and picked up her favorite yellow pencil. On a fresh sheet of paper, she drew a tall rocket ship blasting off into the sky. Bright flames burst from its engines. Stars and planets floated around it. Naomi smiled at the picture. It was perfect. Downstairs, the kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Naomi's mother, Dr. Elise Carter, stood at the counter stirring oatmeal in a big white pot. The steam curled up in the cool morning air. Elise tied her hair back in a neat bun and hummed a soft tune. She glanced at the clock and then at Naomi. "You're up early," she said, her voice warm. Naomi set her drawing beside her bowl. "I'm ready for school," she said. "Today is show and tell. I'm going to be an astronaut." Elise smiled and poured milk into 2 bowls. She slid one to Naomi and took her own across the table. While Naomi ate, Elise gently asked, "Why do you want to be an astronaut?" Naomi's brown eyes shone with wonder. "Because I love the stars and the moon," she said. "I want to float in space." Elise reached across and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Astronauts work hard to learn how to fly rockets and live in space," she reminded her. Naomi nodded, determined. "I will learn everything," she said. Elise felt a soft ache in her chest. She knew how hard it could be, but she also knew exactly how to help. She had helped real astronauts plan missions at NASA for years, though no one at Naomi's school knew this. After breakfast, Elise helped Naomi pack her backpack. She slipped in the drawing of the rocket and added a small model she had made from paper tubes the night before. The model had little fins and a nose cone, just like the rockets in the books Naomi loved. Elise kissed her daughter's forehead. "Have fun today," she said. Naomi grabbed her coat and, with a bright smile, skipped out the door. Elise watched her go, pride shining in her eyes. She knew this day would matter more than Naomi realized. The morning ride to school was short. Naomi stared out the car window at the trees and houses passing by. She imagined what it would feel like to zoom past them in a real rocket. Her heart raced at the thought of floating weightless. At the school entrance, she took a deep breath and stepped onto the sidewalk. Children laughed and ran to their classrooms. Parents waved and said goodbye. Naomi waved back and gripped her paper rocket model tightly. Inside the classroom, colorful posters covered the walls. There were pictures of animals, maps of the world, and simple math charts. Today, a new poster showed the solar system. Naomi's teacher, Ms. Willis, stood at the front in a blue dress with little gold stars printed on it. She smiled at the children and said, "Good morning, everyone. Today is show and tell. I can't wait to see what you bring." Naomi's heart pounded as she waited for her turn. Each child stood and talked about a toy, a picture, or a favorite book. Some brought dolls, others brought toy cars. Naomi watched their friends speak. She held her drawing of the rocket close to her chest. Finally, Ms. Willis looked at Naomi and nodded. "Naomi, would you like to show us your project?" Naomi stood and placed her paper model on the small table in front of the class. She unrolled her large drawing so everyone could see the rocket. She took a deep breath. "This is my rocket," she said. "When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut and fly to the moon." She grinned and pointed to the stars she had drawn. "I will float in space and see Earth from above." Her voice trembled with excitement. The classroom was silent for a moment. Then Ms. Willis smiled politely and said, "That's very imaginative, Naomi." She patted Naomi on the shoulder. "But astronauts train for many years, and very few people ever get to go to space. Maybe you should think of something more real." Naomi's smile faded. A few children giggled. Naomi felt her face grow hot. She looked at the rocket drawing and then at her mother's paper model. Suddenly she felt small, like her dream had shrunk into a tiny dot. Naomi sat down and wrapped her arms around her backpack. She stared at the floor. The other children talked about their own show and tell items as if nothing had changed. Naomi wanted to speak up, to tell them that her mother worked at NASA. She wanted to say that rockets were not just Pictures in her mind, but facts in her life. But her lips felt stuck. She felt tears behind her eyes. She blinked hard to stop them. At recess, Naomi sat on the swing at the edge of the playground. She swung back and forth slowly, looking at her feet. Other children ran and played tag, but Naomi stayed in her seat. She thought about the way Ms. Willis laughed at her dream. She thought about the years of school and training astronauts needed. She thought about her mother's stories of real rockets and real missions. Naomi pressed the paper rocket model to her chest. She whispered, "I can do it." After recess, the class moved to art time. Naomi picked up a crayon, but did not draw. She stared at the blank sheet of paper, feeling empty. She wanted to tell the teacher that she could learn anything if she tried, but her voice felt lost. Instead, she colored a gray cloud, as if her dream were hiding behind it. When the bell rang to go home, Naomi gathered her things and walked out the door with her head down. At home, the house felt warmer and safer. Elise was waiting by the front door in her work clothes. She hung up her NASA badge and set her bag on the floor. "How was your day?" she asked, smiling. Naomi hugged her mother's leg and looked. At the floor, they laughed. She whispered. Ms. Willis said, "I could not be an astronaut." Elise knelt down and wrapped her arms around Naomi. Naomi's tears came then, falling onto Elise's shoulder. "It's okay," Elise said softly. "I am proud of you for sharing your dream." Elise led Naomi to the kitchen table and handed her warm chocolate milk. She sat across from her daughter and gently asked what happened. Naomi told her everything, the show and tell, the laugh, the giggles, the gray cloud she drew. Elise listened without interrupting. When Naomi finished, Elise reached into her pocket and pulled out a small NASA pin shaped like a rocket. She clipped it onto Naomi's shirt. "You see this?" she said. "I wear this every day at work. I help design real rockets that fly into space. You can be an astronaut if you learn and work hard." Naomi looked at the pin and then at her mother's calm eyes. She stood a little taller. She believed her mother. She took a sip of the chocolate milk and smiled. "I want to learn," she said. Elise smiled back and gently wiped away Naomi's tears. "Tomorrow," she said, "we will draw a plan. We will learn about rockets in space. I will help you every step of the way." Naomi nodded eagerly and hugged her mother again. That night, Naomi went to bed with the rocket drawing under her pillow. She dreamed of the stars and planets. She dreamed of floating in space. She dreamed of proving everyone wrong, one small step at a time. She knew it would take work, but she felt ready. The laugh in class could not stop her. Her dream burned bright, fueled by her mother's love and the promise of a future among the stars. Naomi woke the next morning feeling a spark of excitement in her chest. She slid out of bed and tiptoed to the window. The sky was pale blue and bright with early sun rays. She remembered her promise to her mother to learn about rockets every day. She pulled on her favorite yellow shirt and hurried downstairs. In the kitchen, her mother, Dr. Elise Carter, was already there, setting out colorful books and paper. Elise smiled when she saw Naomi. "Ready to learn?" she asked. Naomi nodded eagerly and took a seat at the table. Elise opened a thick book filled with pictures of real rockets. The pages showed rockets standing tall on launch pads, flames bursting from their engines. Naomi traced each line with her finger as Elise explained simple ideas about force and lift. Elise spoke in calm, simple words. When fuel burns, it pushes the rocket up. The faster the gas escapes, the higher the rocket goes. Naomi's eyes grew wide. She imagined herself standing on a launch pad, feeling the rumble beneath her feet as the rocket lifted. After breakfast, Elise brought out a stack of colored paper tubes, glue, and scissors. She showed Naomi how to make her own model rocket from these tubes. Together, they measured and cut, then glued the body and fins. Naomi chose bright red for the nose cone and silver for the body. She carefully held the pieces until the glue dried. When the rocket stood on the table, she beamed. It looked more real than any paper craft she had made before. Elise beamed too. She knew this hands-on work would help Naomi believe in her own power to learn. At school, Naomi felt a new strength inside her. She walked into class holding her model rocket like a treasure. When Ms. Willis announced that the class would draw what they learned today, Naomi raised her hand. She sat at her desk and sketched a rocket lifting off, smoke and flames swirling below. Next to it, she drew a small astronaut waving from a window. The classroom buzzed with chatter, but Naomi focused on her drawing. She remembered her mother's words and kept her pencil moving. During recess, her friend Marcus came over and looked at her sketch. "Cool rocket," he said. His eyes were bright with curiosity. "Did you build it yourself?" Naomi nodded. "My mom works with real rockets," she said quietly. Marcus grinned. "That's awesome. Can I help you launch it someday?" Naomi laughed softly. "Maybe," she said. For the first time, she felt proud, not shy. A few other classmates peered at her drawing and whispered excitedly. The doubt from yesterday felt far away. After lunch, Ms. Willis announced a special assignment. "Tomorrow, I want everyone to bring something from home that shows what they wish they could do when they grow up," she said. Naomi's heart leaped. She knew just what to bring: her model rocket and a new drawing. As the class buzzed, Ms. Willis paused and said, "Remember, some dreams take a lot of work." Naomi held her breath, but did not shrink back. She looked at her classmates, her model tucked under her arm, and nodded inside. She would work hard. That afternoon, after school, Elise picked Naomi up in the car. Naomi could hardly sit still. She bounced in her seat, clutching the model rocket. When they got home, Elise led her back to the kitchen table. "Let's practice your presentation," she said. She set a small toy chair facing Naomi. "Imagine this is your class," Elise explained. Naomi placed her model on the table and stood beside it. Elise asked, "What will you say to your classmates?" Naomi took a deep breath. "Hello, everyone. It's my rocket. My dream is to be an astronaut. My mother works at NASA, and she builds rockets that go into space." Her voice was firm and clear. Elise nodded and clapped softly. "Very good. Now, tell them why you love space." Naomi straightened her shoulders. "I love space because it is vast and full of stars. I want to see Earth from above and float without gravity," she smiled. Elise smiled back. "Perfect. You speak with confidence and truth." Naomi felt a warm glow inside. She realized that knowing her mother's work gave her strength. She was not alone in her dream. That evening, Elise walked with Naomi to their neighbor's backyard. They carried the model rocket in a small plastic bottle filled with water and baking soda. Elise showed Naomi how to attach the bottle to the rocket's base and fill it with vinegar. When they mixed the liquids, fizzing bubbles rose inside. The bottle, Elise counted down, and Naomi pressed gently on the rocket. With a sharp hiss, the rocket shot into the air, landing softly in the grass. Naomi shouted with joy and clapped. She ran to pick up the rocket and laughed as it wobbled in her hand. "It was amazing," she cried. Elise wrapped an arm around Naomi's shoulders. "Science makes rockets fly," she said simply. Naomi bubbled with questions. "Why does it fizz? How high will it go if I use more vinegar?" Elise answered each question. They spent the twilight testing different amounts of vinegar and baking soda, watching how the launch height changed. Naomi recorded each trial in a small notebook, writing numbers and drawing tiny rockets next to each entry. She felt like a real scientist gathering data. The world felt full of promise. The next morning, Naomi rushed to school with her notebook, her drawing, and her model rocket shining in the backpack. As she walked into class, her classmates paused and stared with new respect. Marcus waved from his desk. "Ready to show us your rocket?" he whispered. Naomi nodded and gave a small, confident smile. When Ms. Willis called on her later, Naomi stood by the table, laid out her items, and spoke clearly. "This is my rocket. I built it with my mother. We tested it in our backyard with vinegar and baking soda. I learned that the gas pushes the rocket up. I want to be an astronaut so I can explore space and help build real rockets." Her words filled the room. Ms. Willis watched Naomi carefully, her expression unreadable. The other children listened with wide eyes. When Naomi finished, a gentle silence hung in the air. Then Ms. Willis stepped forward and nodded slowly. "Thank you, Naomi," she said softly. "Today you taught us how hard work and science can make dreams real." Naomi's heart soared. Her cheeks warmed with happiness. The class applauded, and Naomi felt proud in a way she never had before. At home that afternoon, Naomi could not wait to tell her mother how it went. She burst through the door, hugged Elise tightly, and recounted every detail. Elise listened, smiling and nodding. When Naomi finished, Elise picked up the notebook. She saw Naomi's neat numbers and tiny drawings. "You are a hard worker and a clever scientist," she said. She kissed Naomi's forehead. "You are ready for even bigger lessons." Naomi beamed, her confidence growing. That night, as Naomi lay in bed, she held her little notebook and her paper rocket model. She thought of the fizzing launches, the bright classroom eyes, and her mother's proud smile. She knew the journey would not always be easy, but she felt stronger. He whispered, "One day, I will fly for real." And in her heart, she believed it without a doubt. Naomi woke up before dawn again, her mind filled with ideas. She climbed out of bed and slipped on her slippers. The house was quiet as she padded down the hallway. She found her notebook on the kitchen table next to a steaming cup of cocoa. Her mother, Dr. Elise Carter, already had a fresh page turned. Elise asked, her eyes bright. Naomi nodded and took a sip of the warm drink. Elise spread out a large poster of the solar system on the table. She pointed to Earth and the Moon, and then to Mars and the rings of Saturn. She explained how each planet moves around the sun and how gravity holds them in place. Naomi listened, fascinated. She drew little arrows with her pencil, showing how rockets must escape Earth's gravity to reach space. When Elise spoke of orbit, Naomi imagined herself circling the blue planet, watching clouds drift below her. At school, excitement buzzed through the halls. Today, the class would visit the science fair in the gym. Each student would set up a small table and show their project to other classes and parents. Naomi carried her model rocket and her notebook full of experiments. She walked in with her head held high. Some friends whispered, but Naomi remembered how hard she had worked. She smiled and found her spot among the colorful tables. Her table stood next to Marcus's volcano model and Aisha's robot arm. Naomi unpacked her items. Her paper rocket model, her notebook of launch data, and a poster showing her tests with vinegar and baking soda. She finally had a chance to show how she learned each step. She arranged her things. Her classmate Jake stuck out his tongue. "Still playing with toys?" he teased. Naomi took a deep breath, but did not look away. She pictured her mother's proud face and silently answered, "No, this is science." When the fair opened, younger classes poured in. Naomi stood next to her table, ready to explain. A group of first graders approached, their eyes wide. "What makes it go up?" one asked. Naomi knelt beside them and pointed to her data chart. "See here? When vinegar and baking soda mix, they make gas. The gas pushes the rocket up." She used simple words so even the little ones could follow. They nodded and clapped, and Naomi felt a warm glow of pride. Soon, parents arrived. One mother read Naomi's poster carefully. "You did so many trials," she said. "That shows real work." Naomi smiled and explained how each launch taught her something new. A father nearby asked, "Isn't this dangerous?" Naomi shook her head. "No, I learned how to be safe. I tested small amounts and always wore goggles when I mixed the liquids." He nodded in respect, impressed by her care and detail. Ms. Willis walked through the crowd, stopping at each table. When she reached Naomi's display, she crouched to Naomi's level. "You've grown so much," she said quietly. "Sorry I laughed before. Now I see how hard you work." Naomi's heart fluttered. She nodded and thanked her teacher. Ms. Willis returned to her own parents' table, smiling at Naomi's success. After the fair, Naomi helped clean up her corners of paper scraps and data sheets. Her classmates murmured congratulations. Jake gave her a thumbs up before walking away. Naomi felt a new sense of belonging. She packed her model rocket back into her backpack and thought of what would come next. That evening, Elise drove Naomi to the local community center for a special program. A retired astronaut would speak and show real moon rocks. Naomi's eyes shone as they entered the room lined with chairs. The astronaut, a tall woman named Captain Lewis, stepped to the front. She wore her old spacesuit helmet and held a small rock that looked like a piece of fire-black glass. Naomi leaned forward in her seat, eager to hear every word. "Captain," Lewis spoke in a calm, clear voice. She told stories of weightless floats and spacecraft and the first steps she took on the lunar surface. She held up the moon rock and let each child touch it. Naomi's turn came, and the rock felt cold and rough. She closed her eyes and imagined holding Earth in her palm. Captain Lewis talked about hard work, study, and courage. "You all can do this," she said. "Space needs dreamers and builders. When I was your age, I drew rockets just like you." Naomi smiled. She realized she was not alone in her dream. After the talk, children lined up to ask questions. Naomi waited and then stepped forward. "How did you feel when the rocket blasted off?" he asked. Captain Lewis knelt beside her and described the roar, the shake, and the thrill. "It was scary and exciting all at once," she said, "but I knew years of training prepared me." Naomi nodded, absorbing every detail. On the drive home, Naomi squeezed her notebook. She thought of new experiments she could try. She asked her mother, "Can we build a water-powered rocket next?" Elise smiled. "Absolutely," she said. "Tomorrow we will gather supplies." Naomi beamed, already planning. That night, Naomi lay in bed with her notebook and her paper rocket model by her side. She read through her data once more and wrote down ideas for her next project. She wrote, "Try water rocket with pump. Measure height with string." She drew little sketches of a plastic bottle rocket with fins. Then she closed her eyes and dreamed of stars, rocket trails, and floating in space. She believed in herself more than ever, knowing each small step brought her closer to the sky. The next morning at breakfast, Elise placed a fresh stack of supplies. On the table, empty soda bottles, cardboard, sports pump, and tape. Naomi's eyes widened with joy. She dove into her chair and couldn't stop talking. Elise listened and guided her through the plan. They sketched a new design and talked about how water pressure could push the rocket even higher. Naomi wrote everything down in neat numbers and notes. At school, Ms. Willis visited the science club and asked Naomi to share her new idea. Naomi stood before her small group of friends and explained how a water rocket works. She drew diagrams on the whiteboard and answered questions. Her friends watched in awe as she spoke. They asked if they could help launch it after school. Naomi agreed, feeling proud to lead and teach. After school, a group of classmates gathered in the playground with their parents' permission. Naomi and Elise set up the pump and bottle rocket. Marcus held the fins steady, and Aisha pressed water into the bottle. Elise helped Naomi attach the pump nozzle. With a nod, Naomi pumped hard. The pressure built, and then whoosh, the rocket shot up into the sky. It landed in a nearby field, still spinning slightly. The children cheered and ran to retrieve it. Naomi's cheeks flushed with happiness. She turned to her classmates. "That is how science can make your dreams real," she said. As the day ended, Naomi felt a gentle exhaustion, the good kind that comes after great excitement. She knew she would need rest before tackling the next experiment. She hugged her mother and thanked her for the help. Elise brushed Naomi's hair back and said, "I am proud of you, my little astronaut." Naomi smiled and thought how lucky she was to have her mother's support. That night, Naomi fell asleep before her head even hit the pillow. She clutched her notebook and model rocket close. She dreamed of tomorrow's lessons, the next launch, and one day, the real sky beyond her window. She knew challenges lay ahead, but she felt ready. With every drawing, experiment, and story from space, her dream grew stronger and closer, and no laugh from a classroom could ever dim its light. Naomi woke before her alarm and rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Today was special. Her mother, Dr. Elise Carter, had arranged a field trip to the nearby Space Center for Naomi and for classmates. Naomi's heart fluttered with excitement as she dressed quickly in her blue jeans and a bright red hoodie. She packed her backpack with her science notebook, a pencil case, and the paper rocket model she had built the night before. She even tucked in a small snack can apple and a granola bar, so she would not feel hungry during the trip. Downstairs. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon toast. Elise was pouring orange juice into small paper cups. She smiled when she saw Naomi. "Ready for adventure?" she asked. Naomi grinned and nodded. Elise handed each child a name badge on a lanyard. "Future Astronaut," it read, with a little rocket icon. Naomi clipped it around her neck and looked in the mirror. She felt proud and brave. In the car ride, Naomi sat between Marcus and Aisha. They chattered about rockets and planets. "Do you think we will see a real rocket engine?" Marcus asked. Aisha bounced in her seat. "I hope so," she said. Naomi listened, her eyes bright. She felt lucky to have classmates who cared about space too. Elise drove carefully, but Naomi's mind soared ahead to the looming visitor center ahead on the horizon. When they arrived, a tall white building stood against the blue sky with a curved roof that looked like a dome. A large sign read, "National Space Center." Naomi hopped out of the car and breathed in the scent of fresh morning air. She joined her classmates and stepped inside. The lobby was vast, with shiny floors and high ceilings. Models of rockets and satellites hung from wires above. A friendly guide in a blue polo shirt greeted them. "Welcome to the Space Center," he said. "I hear we have some young explorers today." He smiled at Naomi's group and led them toward the first exhibit. Their first stop was the engine hall. A massive rocket engine, taller than two people, stood on a raised platform behind glass. The guide explained how it burned fuel to create thrust, pushing rockets into the sky. Naomi pressed her forehead against the glass. She could see the metal pipes and wires that fed the engine. She remembered her experiments with vinegar and baking soda and imagined how real engines used liquid hydrogen and oxygen. The guide let them touch a small replica nozzle. It was cool to the touch and heavy. Naomi turned to Marcus. "Imagine hearing that roar," she whispered next. They walked through a corridor lined with astronaut suits from different missions. Some were white, some silver. Each had patches and flags sewn onto the shoulders. The guide pointed to a helmet with a tinted visor. "This suit flew on the first mission to the International Space Station," he said. Aisha's eyes widened. "It must have been so hot inside," she said. Naomi pressed her hand to the glass. She thought of how astronauts trained to move and breathe in those heavy suits. She felt new respect for the people who wore them. Then, they entered a room that looked like a small theater. A movie played on a curved screen showing a rocket launch from the pad. Naomi watched as the camera shook and the machine rumbled. She could almost feel the vibration under her feet. When the rocket rose into the sky, flames pouring out, she clapped with the others. The guide paused the film and asked, "Who here wants to feel like this someday?" Naomi raised her hand high. She looked around and saw that all her classmates did the same. After the show, they moved to a mock control room. Computers lined one side with buttons, screens, and headsets. The guide told them that engineers monitored every second of a mission from rooms like this. He handed Naomi a headset microphone. "Go ahead," he said. Naomi pressed the button. Her voice sounded small but steady in the headphones. Elise stood behind. Her beaming outside, the sun was high in the sky when they paused for lunch. Naomi sat on a bench with her snack box and shared her apple slices with Marcus. Aisha ate her granola bar, and they talked about which exhibit had impressed them most. "The engine," Marcus said. "It was so loud." "Suits," Aisha said. "It felt real." Naomi thought of the control room and her own headset. She said, "I liked talking through the mic. It felt like being an engineer." Elise smiled. "You have a good voice for communication," she said softly. After lunch, they went to the mission simulator. Each child climbed into a small capsule with a screen in front. The guide explained it simulated flying in space. Naomi took a deep breath and sat down. She buckled the safety bar and gripped the joystick. The screen showed Earth below. Elise tapped the joystick for her and said, "Just like you practiced drawing your arrows for orbit." Naomi nodded and pushed the control gently. The simulator tilted, and she heard a soft rumble. She guided the craft toward a small space station model. She docked successfully, The capsule lights blinked green. Naomi's heart soared. Had done it next, they visited a hallway full of photos of real NASA engineers. Names and job titles hung below each face. At the very end, Elise pointed to one photo. It was a picture of herself standing next to a full-scale rocket mock-up. A small plaque read Dr. Elise Carter, Flight Dynamics Engineer. Elise stood beside Naomi and whispered, "That's me." Naomi looked from the photo to her mother, stunned. She had known her mother worked at NASA, but seeing the name made it real. She gently touched the glass over the photo and grinned. The guide noticed and said, "Ah, Dr. Carter, we're honored you could bring these young minds today." Elise smiled and bowed her head. Naomi felt her chest swell. She looked at the other children's faces. They stared at her mother's photo in surprise and respect. Marcus bumped her elbow. "Your mom is famous," he said quietly. Naomi smiled shyly but proudly. As they moved on, the group entered a workshop area. Tables held long sheets of foam blocks, plastic tubing, and craft supplies. A sign read, "Build your own glider." The guide challenged each child to design a small glider that they could throw. Naomi set to work, remembering the cardboard fins she used on her vinegar rocket. She cut and taped with care, shaping her glider into a sleek winged shape. When it was ready, she took it outside with the other children and threw it hard. It glided in a gentle arc before landing softly in the grass. The guide timed each flight. Claire stayed aloft the longest. She jumped and giggled. The guide presented her with a small certificate, Best Design Award. Naomi held it tight, her smile bright. On the drive home, Naomi felt tired but happy. She rested her head against the window and thought about the day. She had seen real rocket engines, tried on astronaut suits and pictures, spoken in a control room, docked a spacecraft in a simulator, and built a winning glider. Most of all, she had shared the day with her mother. The engineer whose work she admired at home, Elise helped Naomi hang her certificate on the wall above her bed. They spread out the souvenirs on the kitchen table, a small engine replica, a photo of the Space Center, a glider certificate, and a brochure with astronaut training tips. Naomi ran her finger over each item, remembering every moment. She said this day was the best lesson ever. Elise hugged her daughter tightly and whispered, "And it's only the beginning." That evening, Naomi opened her notebook and wrote about the visit. She titled the page Space Center Field Trip and drew little pictures of the engine, the suits, and her glider. She wrote down facts she learned, how engines burn fuel, how suits keep astronauts safe, how pressure helps rockets launch, and how wing shape matters for gliders. Under each drawing, she added her own notes in neat handwriting. Before bed, the small engine model next to her paper rocket and her experiments with baking soda and vinegar. She looked at them all and thought of one day adding a real rocket she built herself. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I will." Outside her window, the stars shone gently. Naomi drifted to sleep with a dream in her heart, one of rockets, and missions of her mother's proud smile and her own bright future among the stars. Early morning light slipped through the thin curtains as Naomi woke with a soft smile. Today was the day of the regional science competition. She dressed in her favorite blue hoodie and jeans, the same outfit she had worn for her first vinegar rocket launch. She packed her backpack with her notebook full of experiments, her water-powered rocket model, and a small card Elise had pinned to her shirt that read Future Engineer. Her heart fluttered with excitement and a little nervousness. In the kitchen, Elise set out 2 plates of toast and a bowl of fruit. She poured orange juice into 2 glasses and handed one to Naomi. "You're ready," she said, her eyes warm. Naomi nodded and took a deep breath. She felt a calm strength from her mother's confidence in her. They ate quietly, each bit of toast tasting like hope and promise. When Naomi finished, Elise hugged her and whispered, "Show them what you know." The drive to the community gym felt longer than usual. Naomi stared out the window at trees and houses, imagining the rocket arcs she planned to test. At the gym, tables stood in neat rows, each with a project and a colorful poster. Naomi's table was near the front. She set down her water rocket. model on a small launch pad and unrolled a bright poster showing her step-by-step experiments. She placed her notebook beside it, open to her most recent data. Other students arrived and greeted Naomi with smiles. Many recognized her from the school fair. Marcus waved and said, "Good luck." Aisha smiled and added, "Can't wait to see your launch." Naomi felt her cheeks warm. She remembered the first time Jake teased her, and she realized how far she had come. She straightened her shoulders and smiled back. She was part of a team of dreamers now. When the judges walked down the aisle, Naomi greeted them with a nod. One judge bent low to look at her poster. "Tell us about your project," she said. Naomi took a steady breath and spoke in clear, simple words. "I built a water-powered rocket using a plastic bottle and a pump. I tested different water levels and measured how high it flew each time. I learned that the right balance of water and air pressure gives the best lift." She pointed to her data chart. The judges nodded, impressed by her precise notes. Next, Naomi prepared for the live launch. She stepped outside with Elise's help. The small grassy field beyond the gym door was wide and open. Elise held the pump while Naomi positioned the rocket on the pad. Spectators gathered in a half circle, ready to watch. Naomi checked the valve and whispered to herself, 1, 2, 3. She pressed the release lever, and the rocket shot up like a silver flame. It rose higher than any other model that day, arching smoothly before landing softly on the grass. Children cheered, and a judge scribbled notes on a clipboard. Naomi's heart soared.
"Oh."
She waved shyly and listened to applause. Marcus shouted, "You did it," and Aisha clapped with glee. Naomi walked back to her table, her legs feeling light. She felt a proud glow she had never felt before. This moment was proof that her hard work and her mother's guidance could take her far. After all the projects were judged, the judges announced the awards in the gym. Naomi stood with her classmates, hands clasped. The third place went to a model volcano, the second to a robot arm in the first place. Naomi's heart pounded. The first place award goes to Naomi Carter for her innovative water-powered rocket and thorough research. The gym erupted in cheers. Naomi stepped forward, her cheeks pink, and received a blue ribbon and a small trophy shaped like a rocket. She held the trophy close and smiled at Elise, who clapped louder than anyone. Naomi waved to her friends as she returned to her seat. She felt proud and grateful. The blue ribbon and rocket-shaped trophy felt heavy in her hands, but her dream felt even heavier in her heart. That afternoon, back at home, Naomi placed the trophy on her desk beside her engine model and her vinegar rocket experiments. She looked around at the cheery posters and certificates that covered the walls. Each item told a part of her journey. She reached for her notebook and wrote a new title on a fresh page. My next project, solar-powered rocket. She sketched a simple design, imagining solar panels on the rocket's body. She wrote down ideas for how a small motor could use sun energy to power a pump or heat a chamber. Elise watched from the doorway, smiling. "Already planning?" she asked. Naomi nodded. "I want to learn more ways to make rockets fly without fuel," she said. Elise walked over and squeezed Naomi's shoulder. "That's brilliant. We'll find books and kits to help. You've earned a rest. But tomorrow, we start again." Naomi grinned, feeling both rested and eager. That evening, Ms. Willis arrived. At the door with a surprise, she carried a small box wrapped in bright paper. Naomi's eyes lit up. Ms. Willis hugged her and said, "I'm so proud of you. It's for you." Naomi opened the box to find a special book titled Women in Space, Pioneers and Engineers. Inside were photos and stories of women who had worked at NASA. Naomi flipped through the pages, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she whispered. Ms. Willis sat next to Naomi and said, "You remind me that we must never doubt a dream. You showed us all what determination and support can do." Naomi felt tears of happiness, but she blinked them back. She held the book tight. "I want to be one of them," she said softly. Ms. Willis nodded. "You will be," she replied. Later that night, Naomi lay in bed and thought of the long path ahead. She remembered the teacher's laugh, the early experiments with vinegar, the first field trip, the regional competition win, and her new goal of a solar rocket. It all felt like stepping stones. She realized that each small success built her confidence and skills. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I will get to space one day." Before sleep took her, Naomi felt a calm certainty. She dreamed of bright planets, patterned rocket trails, and the day she would wear a real astronaut suit. She knew challenges would come, but she also knew she had the courage, the support of her mother, her teacher, and her friends, the stars. Beyond her window seemed to shine brighter as if cheering for her. Naomi drifted to sleep, her dream burning steady a light that no doubt, no laugh, and no challenge could ever dim.